Hello, this is Dirty 20 Gaming. My name, as always, is Kevin, and tonight we're doing something a little bit different because tonight we're doing essentially a tutorial for a little game I found while perusing new games and new systems. It's called Necrobiotic, and it's got some extremely unique rules and mechanics that we're going to get into in just a very brief moment. In fact, let's start now. Why wait? Tonight we're going to cover gameplay mechanics and the lore of the world because in this particular game system, the lore is essential. It is a core element of the world, which I think is a nice feature all by itself. But let's get started. Let's start with the mechanics. Necrobiotic uses cards to resolve situations instead of dice or anything like that. And anytime you play a card or cards, it's called a play because you're using cards. We're going to get into the cast is going to be joining us next week to create characters. Some may or may not be in chat tonight. And maybe watching the VOD later. But yeah, next week we're going to go through character creation and a sample encounter just to show everybody how this works. But right now, let's talk about this. We start the game with 6 cards in your hand, but you are quite literally not playing with a full deck. We're going to get back to that in a couple minutes. But one thing I do want to show you right away. Let's start with this character sheet. Let's go there it is. All right. This is the Necrobiotic character sheet right from the book. You'll notice down the left-hand side as you're looking at it over here, you've got the 4 suits: hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades. They represent 4 skills. This is what this column is. And those are flesh, steel, steam, and gear. Flesh, this first one is your social skills, as you can probably tell. These are called skills. These are skills that you're trained in, sub-skills, so to speak. But hearts is flesh, which is your social skills. So manipulation, firmness, empathy, and charisma. We'll talk about these and all the trauma and stuff later, but that's that skill. Your next skill is steel. That's represented by the diamonds in your hand. And that is appearance, athletics, combat, and resistance. I want to make a comment about appearance. They're very, very clear about this in the manual. That's not a measure of how pretty, attractive, or handsome you are in any way, shape, or form. It is your ability to use your appearance to your advantage. So if you're a big scar-covered Hulk, you could use your appearance to intimidate somebody and roll appearance for that. So it's not about pretty, it's about actually using it. And yes, the beard of blueness is upon me, literally. So that's steel. That next one is your physical stats. So appearance, athletics, combat skills, and your resistance, which is your ability to not take damage and things like that. Next down is clubs. That's referred to as your steam. That's essentially your mental abilities. So in this case, they call dexterity a mental ability, and I kind of like that because you have to be quick of wit to be quick of body, right? Reasoning, investigation, and readiness. What this also means in game terms is because your ranged weapons are all based on your dexterity, you it's a different way of grouping these skills. So you're a good shot plus you're very perceptive. In most games, that would be 2 stats. Here, it's the same overall skill and then 2 particular choices between it. This next one down here is gear. This is the spades. We'll get to what the cards are and which ones you get in just a second. But this is literally your gear. Every sort of class in this game gets different starting gear, specific gear for specific jokers. We'll get into into that later. This is one of those rule sets where it's going to make sense as we go along, even though some bits don't right now. But so yeah, for specific gear and using that gear in the game. We spoke briefly of jokers just a second ago. They represent your class. And when you play them as a card, they always count as one success. We'll get to other successes and all of that in a bit. Again, we're stacking stuff here. Um, but the other face cards you do play in your deck. You can see down here it says Jack, Queen, King at the bottom of the page here. The trick with those cards is they play very, very differently. Let's go look. So when you play a face card, first of all, they how to put this? I'll just use the wording that they use. Um, the jacks, if you choose to take the jack of any one of the four suits, it's specific to that suit, but it shows your knowledge and experience. We'll get to some examples in a second here. In fact, let's do it now. Here's some examples of jacks. You got it's. I mean, if you got big screen, you can probably read it. But let's just pick a couple. Martial arts was one I thought of before. I had actually, when I built a sample character, I used this one, so let's use it again. If you take the Jack of Diamonds, if you remember, diamonds is the physical skill, so it's the hand-to-hand combat skill. If you take the Jack of Diamonds, you are trained in a martial art, and this makes your hands weapons in all respects. Strikes with your bare hands inflict 2 instead of 1. So we'll talk about exhaustion in a little bit, fatigue and exhaustion. But the other weird thing with this is when you play it, because there's 2 ways to score successes, it actually counts as a 4 of diamonds, which sounds weird, but we'll get to it in a minute. So jacks represent knowledge and experience. These are things you can learn. These are skills you can learn. Other than to offset that, queens, which is our next page here, these are innate abilities. These are things you're born with or have. Things like extra gear. You have an edge in everything you do. Your normal hand is 7 cards instead of 6. Things like that. You also notice the more powerful the power, the lower power it is as a card, as a played card. This only counts as a 2. But yeah, so all of these things, if you look here, resilience, you can take resilience in any one of the 4 stats. It only counts as a 3, but you use a characteristic and ignore the modifier that you would normally suffer when receiving a second trauma. So get an idea out of that. But those are things that you are innately born with. And then there are kings. Kings are a flaw. When you draw them in your hand, we'll get to all this in a bit, you fail immediately, and you have to narrate how this particular fail happens in this particular skill based on which king you chose. But the payoff for that is you get to have, instead of only having either a jack or a queen in your hand, you have both of those and the king. So you have an innate ability and something that you've learned. So you do have an advantage there, but to pay for that, you have to have this auto fail at some point in your hand. So you see how those work. Basically, you'll see more as we you'll really see more next week when we start building the characters. Any questions you got, pop them in the chat. We'll have we'll go through them. I know it's probably about as clear as mud from a distance on a cloudy day at this point, but we're gonna start now making some sense of this. I think we've given you a bunch of terms and a bunch of stuff. Let's go back to our very muddy. Yes. Okay. Let's go back to our character sheet here. When you build a character in this, we'll get into the actual characters next week, but you get 20 points to spend in these 4 skills. So you could go 5, 5, 5, 5. You cannot start with any skill over 8. You cannot start with any skill below 3. So your min maxers can only go down to 3. Yeah. This is we're gonna do this. We're gonna see if I can make sense out of it. So, you, as I said, you can draw. You get 20 points. So for the purposes of this, we're gonna presume we spread them perfectly evenly. So we put 5, 5, 5, and 5 in each of those. Once you've allocated them, you take your cards and you draw. You make your actual deck by taking the cards in each of those suits from ace up to that value. So we took fives. So in each of those suits, we would take the ace, deuce, 3, 4, and 5 and put those in our hands. So that's our first 20 cards. And then add a joker, which we'll get to in a bit because we're going to do character. That's coming up next is the classes and the specialty things that they give you. And then either a jack or a queen, or as we talked about just a second ago, here's where we start putting the puzzle pieces that we gave you earlier into the puzzle. You can have either a jack or a queen, or you can have the king and a jack and a queen. So in other words, you have 22 or 24 cards, depending on whether or not you took a king, and that doesn't change. And that becomes important when we start leveling up. We'll get that's way down the road here. That's pages down the road here. So let's get to the making a play when it's time to actually play. If you do something you're not skilled at, these skills here, the 12 skills that are written plus the gear skills that you're going to have down here. If you don't have that skill, we haven't gotten to character creation, but if you don't have the skill, you can play one card from your hand. Let's go away. How do I give it? You got it. Thank you. Please make it go away. Anyway, so you can play one card from your hand if you're skilled. So if you have chosen charisma as one of your skills, you can play 2 cards. And the reason that that's important is because you can generate multiple successes in this game. You get 1 success for any card or cards that add up to 8 or more. If you remember, you can't start with a single card above 8. So this is probably going to take 2 cards to do this. So if you've got the skill, if you play 2 cards that add up to a total of 8, when you just add up the pips, that's a success. If you get to 16, that's 2 successes. If you get to 24 somehow, that's 3 successes, etc., etc. So you can generate successes that way, but you also get successes if you match the suit. So if you were playing a charisma challenge, a charisma play, where you were proficient, you would get to play 2 cards, and if they added up to more than 8, you'd get 1 success. If either one of them was a heart, because we're playing in the flesh category, charisma is flesh, that each heart would also be 1 success. So if you played 2 cards that added up to over 8 and they were both hearts, that's 3 successes. Does that vaguely make sense? I'm going to assume that it kind of did. so there is one other thing you can do in the game. I'm just going to quickly mention it and blow over it until we do the actual example adventure. If at any point you've played your 2 cards or 1 card, depending if you don't have the skill, and you don't think it's enough, successes at what? Well, we're going to get to what you use your successes for right in the. It's 1 sentence away. But first, you can always push the limit. So if you've played your 2 cards and you know that you've got 3 successes on the table, but you want more, you can discard a card from your hand and just blindly add the top card from your deck to the play. But that means you've thrown a card out of your hand. So your hand becomes a resource that you have to manage, and that's part of this game. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's answer your question using your successes. All right, so you got a ton of successes. Now what? Your first success, as weird as this sounds, must be allocated to a success. You have to succeed to succeed. You can choose that, and that's like, I'm trying to shoot somebody, and you succeed. You've shot somebody. You can choose that multiple times to increase the amount of fatigue that you do to that person. Game mechanic we'll get to in a bit. Uh, but after that, you can choose what to do with the rest of your successes. Every time you do something, and I mean every time, you shoot somebody, whether you try and pick a lock, whether you try and sneak down an alley, anytime that you're going to make a play, there are consequences. And they're based on the scene or your enemy. They generate a certain number of consequences. As you start to defeat them, that number of consequences goes down. So they actually become less dangerous to you as you wear them down. But after you've done that first one of the things you can use them for, and this is on the game sheet. In fact, let's do poof, let's do that. And for now, let's turn off that because down here we've got a night of what we're moving for. When there's when you've used that first, sorry, I got lost there for a second. After you've used that first success literally to succeed, so say you're shooting somebody, you hit them, you can then use it for any future successes for accuracy. So you can apply a specific effect. This makes it um, a really nice version of the called shot. Because if you have an extra success lying around after you make the hit and after you maybe possibly annul some things, which we'll talk about in just a second, it's next. But you can then, uh, like, you can blind them or shoot out a leg and make it hard for them to walk, or you can use this to leave no trace. The bullet hole so clean that it shot the lock without ever showing any outside damage, things like that. And the thing is, you know how many successes you have in your hand before you decide to make the play. We'll get how that works in a second, but that's important. Another thing you can do is called annulment. In this instance, each success that you burn here eliminates one of the consequences. We'll get to consequences in a bit. For now, I'll tell you, you get between two to five consequences per encounter, and they happen every time you go in. So you're told there are two consequences in this case, and you'll be told specifically what they are. If you're in starting the encounter, if the enemy starts the encounter, you may not have that advantage. We'll get to that. But there's always consequences, so you can use successes to annul, in other words, ignore or eliminate a consequence. We'll get to those when we get to combat here in just a minute. So it is a big deal to get rid of these. You can actually, depending on what the consequences are, you may be having to drop cards. You may be actually taking damage, all kinds of stuff, depending on what makes sense in the scene. The next thing you can do is extension. You can add scope to an attack, say, or any encounter, but in this case, we were talking about an attack. So you can cause it to hit a second target, or you can cause it to exceed its normal range by burning one success. And then the final way you can use it is persistence. This is to make an effect permanent. You break something, or you cause trauma to someone. So, and any of those you can burn multiple times. So you can go through a ton of cards in a hurry. You only have 6 cards in your hand. So probably your next thought is you want to, yeah, okay, so let's do an example. Perfect. You're a thief and you want to steal a pouch off a drunk guy in the corner of the tavern. Perfect. I tell you, drunk guy is absolutely faced. So taking the stuff is not going to be difficult. Let's do this now. Taking the stuff is not going to be difficult. So the actual difficulty for that, and I show you that with cards, and we're going to, in roll 20, we're going to do it with chips. I'm going to do it both ways here. He's so drunk, it's only going to take one success to actually beat him, to actually steal his thing in the corner. However, you're going to have to wait. So it's going to take time, and that's going to cost you cards from your hand. That's called fatigue. That's one of your consequences. There's also the chance that somebody could see you. This means the consequence would be called centralization, which means you become the center of everyone's attention. That's a second consequence. You notice essentially hit points we put face up, except they're not. You don't kill people in this game. You knock them out of the fight. Killing somebody in this world, as we'll get to, not even the worst of the worst. There is something like 5% of the original population of the world left. So that's, I think, 40 million out of the 8 billion that are currently here. So human life itself, being alive, is just too special to take out. So we'll come back to that in the lore, but that's your first two consequences. We'll make this nice and easy, and we'll stop there. So when you say to me, I want to steal from this guy, as the they call it, the mechanist in this game, this is what I have to do if you start it. So looking down at your hand, stealing something would be dexterity. So you're looking for clubs that you can use. I'm assuming you're a thief, so you've got dexterity as a skill. So you get to take 2 cards from your hand. If they add up to over 8, that's a success. If you can somehow get them to add up over to 16, that's 2 successes. But let's just stick with 8 because that's the one that's likely. So that's 1 success. And if you happen to have in your hand 2 clubs and you play them both, that's 3 successes. So with that, you could. First success has to be that. There's always one. Now, if he had 3 or 4 here because he was a much more difficult opponent, your first success would take off 1. But that's done. So that's gone. But you still will pay these consequences unless you burn your 2 remaining successes to offset them, which would get rid of them. You can choose to eliminate one of them and do something else. In other words, extend. We used extend as a possible, or extension as a thing earlier. And while you're there stealing their pouch, you see that you happen to look over to the next guy, and hey, his is right there too. So yoink, by burning 1 success, you steal his, but that leaves you with one of these 2. You decide which one you annul. Does that make sense? So you could annul both of these and go home with 1 pouch. You could annul one of these and go home with 2 pouches, but they've seen you, or you choose whether they've seen you or whether you're going to have to throw away cards. It's called fatigue. These cards over here don't matter. The cards in your hand are the only ones that matter. These are just markers. They just use face up and face down cards because everybody's got a deck of cards to play this game. These are the only cards that the mechanist, however you want to say it, plays. So let's do an actual example. You look down at your hand. You've got these 3 here. Now that you know you need 3 successes to, if all you want to do is just they've got something, they've got it, and you wanted to steal it. So you look down at your hand and you've got a 3 and a 5. You've got 6 cards in your hand. We'll assume the turn just started. So you've got a 3 and a 5 of clubs. So you play the 2 of those. The 3 and the 5 adds up to 8, so that's 1 success. They're both clubs, so that's a total of 3 successes. Right? First success has to take one of those, so that's gone. So you got it. It's in your hand. But there are still 2 bad things that could happen. You burn one of your remaining successes to say, I turn my body so nobody can see me. There goes that one. Now the only one that's left is having to throw away cards. If this is the only thing you're going to do in this encounter and you got this, that's not a bad thing, because next thing we're going to do is how to return cards to your hand. But if you think this might turn into a bar fight, you might want to burn your last success to not have to wait too long. You're bold and you just kind of rush in and grab it rather than having to wait and cost you cards. Or you say, bugger it, I'll sit here for half an hour and wait. I'll take that and have to throw away a couple of cards, but I'm going to use this for extension and steal that other guy's wallet too. But I explained what this is. So I explained that, yeah, it's going to take you 1 to succeed, and there's 2 consequences for you. One success is to get the pouch. Second success is to be unseen. Third success so I can grab the other guy's wallet. Exactly. But you choose every time. You could choose to. So I have two wallets and I wasn't seen. What happens next? You stand up and walk away, or you tell me what you want to do next. But let's say okay. Let's say the encounter continues because this is where we start getting into the card mechanics. You've burned to do that. You burned two cards, so that encounter is done. But you only got four cards left. And then the mechanist says, a guy comes. Nobody saw you, but a drunk guy comes up behind you and slaps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And draws the whole attention of the bar towards you, and starts another encounter. This guy's going to be tough. He's difficult. So he's going to be, let's say, he's an annoying drunk. It's going to take 3 successes to get rid of him. But there's still only the two consequences. This time, those consequences are one of them is almost always fatigue, which is the time it takes to do this. In this case, I'm not going to do that. You can see the consequences here along the screen beside me here. Fatigue, injury, consumption, loss, isolation, stun, and centralization. Fatigue is throwing cards away out of your hand. You avoided that in the first encounter, so you've still got your 4 cards. Injury is a trauma to one of your 4 major stats. So that's where we get over here. Your first trauma on each stat costs you nothing. The second trauma in each stat, you get -1. Whatever cards you play, you subtract 1 from the added together total in that stat or in that skill. The third one is an additional -1 for a total of -2. If you get to 4 in any one stat, you are in imminent danger of dying unless you receive medical attention. You promised me a drink. So, okay. So now you are, will be your choice. You could attempt to use for that reasoning, although reasoning with a drunk might not be good. You could use, this is one of those occasions where you could use your appearance by saying, hey, and smiling and being fun. You could roll on appearance if you had that. Empathy, even, sure. Charisma again. Any one of those. But so you've got 4 cards left. Let's say, which one do you choose? Let's play this out. Why not? Let's do this. I'm gonna run you out of cards and then explain what happens next. Charisma things, appearance. Okay, so let's say you've got 4 cards left. Appearance is a steal thing. We put 5 into that. So let's say you've got of the 4 cards left, the ones that you can use any 2 cards to get to 8. They do not have to be diamonds. This is a good point. Thank you for bringing this up. Say you've only got spades left. Doesn't really matter. You've got a 7 and a 7 and a 3 of spades left in your hand. That's a 10. That's just 1 success, no matter how this works. And you've got 2 other cards, but you can only yeah. If you had the skill appearance, you would play 2 cards. But if you did not have the skill, and let's say you didn't, you're a Dex monster down here. You're a Steam monster. At least 8 is a success. Yes, absolutely. Any 2 cards or a single card, as you work up in the game, the cards in your hand go higher. At the start, you can't have anything more than an 8 in your hand. But there's experience to make that go up. So let's say you're not skilled or trained in using your appearance. So you only get 1 card and you don't have any diamonds. You cannot succeed. Let's build you what's left. What did I tell you? You had 2 clubs left. Let me just. There we go. They have to be under a 5, so let's give you that one and that one. And then let's give you just randomly those 2. Let's give you those 2. That way we got some math working here. So, what you've got left in your hand as you look down, you're going to try and do appearance. Yeah, this works. See if I can hold this up if you can see him. Yeah. So, You are trying to use your appearance to affect them. So those are diamonds. You've got two diamonds in your hand, a seven and an ace. Aces count as one in this game. So what would you do in that instance? Because you can only play one card of these. Because you're not trained. You would not be able to play two cards. Probably want to. I mean, this is where you start getting. It starts getting interesting because you probably want to hold on to the seven because that might be useful later. So you could potentially just play the ace and have it count as one because it's the right suit. Problem with that is that only gets rid of one of these. It still leaves you dealing with two consequences this round. You don't have at the start of the game as a level one person in this game. You have no single card over an eight. Correct. If there was a joker here, you'd automatically won. Okay, your ash, you could deal with consequences. So, well, no, you can only play one card, so there's nothing there that can get you there. So that would be the only way that would generate one success. Does that make sense? So we get rid of that, and one of those goes away. This means you're still in the encounter. And in this case, you have now become the center of attention. They didn't see you steal, but you're being nice to bury the drunk. And nobody's nice to bury the drunk, so they're all watching you. It's going to be difficult to get out of here. That's one of those. We talked about that, and then the other one was I would have mentioned it beforehand, but let's say I would have had to tell you what the two of them are. But let's say the second one is isolation because I want to explain what each one of them does. Um, Expecting a fight, somebody steps up to the door, closes it, and leans against it, preventing the rest of your party from getting inside. So now you're by yourself and you're the center of attention. So you're in trouble. I see no. Where did you stop me? So that only cost you one card. Now you've got only three cards left. Barry's still a problem. Everybody's looking to see what's going to happen, and the door is locked. The trick is, eventually, you're going to run out of cards. Then you've got a choice. You can either sit here. Oh, okay. Yep, absolutely. So that would then become either appearance again or charisma, either or, um, something like that. Yep. Okay, so you had the. So yeah, let's call it. What would that be? Probably. Well, you still got a diamond left, so we call it. Well, I'll show you. Given that these are your cards, you've got a seven of diamonds. So if you're using appearance again, you only get to play one card. So that would be it, which only generates one success. Or you look down at your hand and you see you've got eight here. This is actually three successes at Steam. So when you see that and you look at the situation around you, you may decide that leaping out the window is a better opportunity, a better chance. Clubs is it's called Steam. That's your dexterity, your readiness, your perception, and your reasoning. So it's kind of like intelligence and dexterity slammed together. It's easier when you're looking down at the actual character sheet. I realize this now. Hang on a moment. Let's get rid of this. And get rid of that. So, yeah, you can see them here. I should have had this up while I was doing this. Steel was your appearance, so that's your diamonds. Flesh is hearts, that was your charisma checks. Perfect. So, yeah. So, if you chose to do that, you play both of these cards. That's an 8 plus 2 more is 3. So, with that, you completely defeat Barry, and you had enough left over to get rid of. We'll say you had enough left over to get rid of that. You roll under the table. Barry says, "Hey, all right," and then you just roll away from Barry, leaving him under there, and he's chatting with the pole under the table leg underneath as you roll out the other side. Most people have looked away, but there is still, yeah, you still have to get to the door. You have one card left. And I would again say to get to the door is going to be a difficulty of 2. And if you fail, somebody's going to grab you, therefore causing you fatigue, causing you to throw away cards, which you've only got one of. And there's also a chance the guy that closed the door looks like he's actually looking for a fight and wants to actually physically hit you and cause an injury. So you got rid of with the so yeah, you're kind of stuck. Exactly. That's what we're getting to. If you have to throw away a card and you don't have any, you take a trauma in the appropriate one. So in this case, that trauma would be. I would suggest probably your steam as you're grabbed and pinned against the wall. So you can't be as dexterous and ready and perceptive and reasoning as you normally would be. So the other thing is, if you are ever running out of cards and you have to play a card, you just draw the top card from your deck and that's what you play. Or if you're using the skill, you draw the top 2 cards from the deck and that's what you play. But if you want to draw your hand again, your whole hand, there's a couple ways to do it. One of them is it's called catch your breath. This is during an encounter like this. You can discard one while you still have one card in your hand. You have to have at least one card to do this. You can discard one and draw up to your full hand. So in this case, because I have 2 left now that I've thrown one away, I draw 4 more cards. That takes your turn. So that's all you can do in that turn, but you've got a full hand again. That takes 5 minutes if you're not in a combat situation, or it takes 1 round of combat. Other than that, a full rest, a full 8 hours. You take what you've got left and discard as you want, and then draw up to a full deck or full hand. So that's the 2 ways to recharge. There is a cheat sheet that goes along with this that will be available to all the players, and it will be also probably on the overlay at least for the first couple of weeks. Yeah, it's a lot, I know. So yeah, you're going to conceal the 2 wallets under the bar where I know they are, but won't be obviously seen, and catch your breath. Exactly. Perfect. So then you look down at your hand, and you don't have any. You're not a gear specialist, and the only card you've got left is a spade. So you chuck that and draw 6 cards. The next turn, you come up on the other side, ready to recharge and ready to go. If you get to the bottom of your deck, it's just shuffle and replay. That's an infinite pile. All right. We talked a lot about consequences so far. Let's go through some actual. I'm going to go back to this page because I want to show the actual consequences and what happens during an action. There's a couple things I kind of cruised over there. So during an action, in other words, if you initiate the action, if anybody in the party, and that's why it doesn't matter if everyone has separate decks. Everybody gets separate decks, but each person plays their own, if that makes sense. But everybody's deck is going to be different too, depending on which skills they took at what levels. And as the game goes on how much they've improved those. We're going to, on a mechanical level, we're going to set it up so that if anybody wants to, they can use the decks in Roll20, and if they'd like to use real decks, they can as well. Works both ways. But let's get talking about this. So during an action, in other words, any player-initiated play of the cards, so anything that you start, You tell me, we've kind of done it here. You tell me what your character intention is. So I want to roll under the table and catch my breath. I list the exact consequences. In that case, you need one success to get hidden, and there's the only consequence. There's no real consequences to worry about. So you make this. You decide then whether you want to continue or not. So if I was to tell you, I'm going to roll under the table and catch my breath, and I say you look under the table and there's four guys hiding under there waiting to hijack the bartender. There are five consequences. You can then say, "Oh, okay, I'm not going to do that," and do something else. You choose before you decide before it starts, and then once you decide to do whatever it is that you decide to do, then you assign your successes. That first one to moving at least one of these, and then dole the others out as you see fit. It's slightly different if you get jumped. If you get ambushed, it's a little bit different. It's that exactly. I'm telling you the difficulty rating, and the thing is, when you can look down at your hand, you can look at this and say, okay, to completely evade this and have no consequences and have both successes, I need four successes. But you know what's in your hand. So you can look down and say, I got five successes here. We can cruise this. I can do all of that plus one thing. Or you can look down and say, I only got two successes. I don't want to deal with either one of those consequences, but I want to get out of here. So no, I'll do something else. You decide, and you decide with full knowledge of your level of upcoming success. There's no surprises, there's no random numbers. That's what caught my mind. It is every decision is an informed decision as long as, and here's the only caveat, it's the next rule, as long as you start it. If the mechanist, that's me, if I initiate the play, it's different. The only cards I play are these. I don't actually play cards to attack, but I present the threat to you. I reveal how many consequences there are, but I don't tell you the type. So, Batcal, you like the surprises? Then get ambushed, because then I'll just all you'll look over is and see is this. There's three consequences, but you don't know what they are. It's going to take two successes to accomplish this mission. There's three unknown consequences. Then you play annulments as you see fit from your hand to get rid of any of these that you choose, and then I decide the order in which the remaining ones are applied. It's like not being ambushed. Yes. I'm quickly going to go over those. They're at the bottom of the screen there. Fatigue, injury, consumption, loss, isolation, stun, and centralization. We kind of went over a couple of them. I just want to go formalize that. Fatigue, you lose cards in your hand, and that's equal to this. So in this encounter, if I say you will suffer fatigue, you will suffer 3 fatigue at this. You have to throw away 3 cards from your hand. If you don't counter that fatigue trauma. Later on in the same encounter, say you've gotten rid, because these are, you can do trauma to them to make these cards go away. So you can do that in any of the 4 stats: flesh, steel, steam, or break their gear. If you cause trauma to them, to one of them, say you punch them in the face and actually give them a bleeding nose, that goes away. Or if you annul them, so say you annul 2 of them, that now only does 1 trauma next turn. Suffer 3 fatigue and you only have 2 cards, that's when you start taking traumas, which is these here. You take it in the appropriate skill. So if he punched you and you didn't have enough, you would take 1 trauma in the steel. This is your physical attribute. So you would take your first trauma. First trauma does nothing except count. Your second trauma in that stat, you get -1. So you add up your successes and -1. I'm sorry, -1 to your to your number of successes. This is -2 total. You see, it's -1, -1. They're cumulative. If you ever get to 4, you're down and out. You need immediate care in that category, or you're done. So those consequences. Fatigue, we just talked about, losing cards equal to the threat value here, and if you take more than if you lose more than you've got, you start taking trauma. The nice thing is, if you can figure out how to spread the trauma around, you technically can take like 60, well, 12 trauma before you need to go to the hospital. But anyway, the second consequence is injury, and that's what we're talking about, trauma. So one trauma to the appropriate characteristic. And again, when you're spending your successes, you can say, I'm using injury like 4 times because I got 4 successes. Consumption is not an old-fashioned word for cancer in this game or tuberculosis. It uses up a resource. So if you don't do something about it, you're going to have to lay in a puddle to shoot them, and that's going to destroy your a couple days worth of food if you don't do something about it. Healing. You're like one step ahead of me every damn time. It's perfect. This means I wrote this in the right order. Yeah, so consumption uses up a resource. I'll just quickly go through the rest. Loss is equipment failure specifically. So your gun breaks, your weapon breaks, your compass doesn't work anymore, something specific like that. Isolation, we talked about, gets you separated from the party. Stun, you're temporarily unable to react. Centralization, we did that to you. You become the main target of the foe. Thank you. Thank you very much. And others as needed, but those are the basic ones. So what the players are going to see while we're here, they might as well do this. Let's do this. Yay, resubs. Yeah, I love them. So let's do that. All right. So you see this over here. This is the cards that I showed you earlier. The stream is going to see that. Unfortunately, the way that that works through OBS, I can't show it to the players. So instead of that, we're going to use poker chips. White and purple as front and back chips. So, last thing we had there was 2 and 1 left. So let's go. Come on, what are you doing? Nope. Go away. There we go. So that would be what the players will see is that they've got 2 face-up cards and 1 face-down is basically the reason I chose purple is because I don't know if you noticed, but the cards are actually purple. But that's an aside. That's what they'll see, and it tells you over here. White is their hit points. I put it in quotes because it's not really hit points. It's not physical damage. This is their equivalent of your cards in hand. And then this is the trauma, how much trauma it takes to take them out, plus how many consequences they do. So as you can see, you have 2 ways to take them out. You can just eliminate all of these, or you can you can actually do trauma to them enough times to remove this chip, and then they don't do any damage to you anymore. Any trauma to you, they can't. There's no consequences to dealing with them anymore. It's kind of a neat twist. But the other ones, I said, yeah, we did those. So, trauma, death, and other bad things is the title to the next section. And this is where we get into what you were talking about. Can you heal? So as we talked about, trauma. First one has no effect. Second one is -1 to all plays in that characteristic. Third one is an additional -1. Fourth one is loss of the PC unless you do something quick. I want to be player 5-second hide under the logo. Yes, until the rules make sense. Healing. You must have the healing skill to heal. None of this can I roll medicine stuff. You must have the healing skill to heal. And healing, we talked about, it's got 4 levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. To heal, you pick the category you're going to heal. So let's say we're going to do steel. So you've been punched. Yeah, better have the healing. Yeah, at least at level 1. So, say you've got 3 trauma in physical. You've been in a fight. You've been beat up real bad. You must heal the highest one first and then work your way down. And you need a number of successes equal to the level of the trauma. So again, you say to them, how many trauma have you got in steel? I've got 3. You look down at your hand. Do you have 3 successes? If you don't, you can't heal them this round. There's no roll or anything in round. If you've got 3 successes in your hand, you can go boom, you're down, and that 3 goes away, and now their worst one is a 2. So it's simple, but you must have the skill, and you must start at the highest one in the skill that you're trying to fix. This next bit we've actually already done, so I'm just going to go over it real quick. It's NPCs and challenges. The NPCs, as we've showed you, have 2 card stacks. The face-up cards are the amount of damage before they pass out, their fatigue that they'll take. And the face-down cards are the trauma they can endure and the number of consequences they impose on you. And that's it. That's all that you need to know about NPCs. Other than that, the Mechanist does not play cards like the players do. All I ever do is tell you the 2 stacks. So, the next thing, we're almost done, we're really almost done, is advancement, leveling up. This is where that 8 to succeed and 16 to succeed twice starts to make more sense. Because when you level up, first of all, you can't, your deck size remains constant. So to add a card, you have to take a card away. But before that, let's look at this experience thing here. It says it on the table here. It says it on the sheet here. You, to gain 1 experience point, you must do 4 things in the game. And they're all very, very different. There's none of this specializing and I run everything through with my sword until everything's dead and I just go up in levels. It doesn't work like that. You get 1/4 of this little box here is filled up for. The first one is inflict, either causing or receiving a trauma in a conflict. So you either have to fill in a trauma box or cause somebody to remove a trauma card. That gets you 1/4 of this filled. Or pardon me, yeah, you have to cause them trauma. You can't make that doesn't mean you can't annul this card. If you cause trauma to them and that causes them to make the card go away, then you get that inflict. Other than that, it's take the damage or inflict damage. The next one is create. You need to create a useful object. It's not difficult creating stuff in this game. You just tell me that you want to do it and tell me what skill you think you're going to use and play cards and tell me how many successes you got. The more successes you've got, the more cool stuff it'll do. But you must inflict or receive trauma on somebody. That's number 1. You must create a useful object that gets used in the game. You can't just make cool things. And T doesn't count. T is cool, but it doesn't count as a useful. Well, you could make an argument that you made T useful. The third thing that you have to do is develop. This is character growth, and it has to be a noticeable step. So you actually cannot move up a level until your character develops. And then the fourth one is risk. You must try and fail something with serious consequences, or you must save somebody else from a similar situation if they screw up. So to summarize, what if your character is already perfect? Well, then you're fine. You just play with no card higher than 8 in your hand for the rest of the game. And each time you fill up one of those boxes, you get to go up and experience. You get to gain 1 experience point. So you can see it's going to be fairly quick. If you're a fighter, it's going to be real quick to fill up all 3 of these inflict boxes. You just have to get hit 3 times, or take 3 trauma in any of these categories. That one's going to be easy. You have to create something, you have to develop your character, and you have to either take a ridiculous risk or save somebody who has taken a ridiculous risk before you go up 1 experience point. Now, what experience points do? I mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it again. The deck size remains constant. So the first thing, you do all that stuff. Your very first experience point that you burn is to remove the lowest card of a given suit. So the ace, because you start with ace to whatever your number was. We used 5s earlier, so we've got ace to 5 in a suit. For 1 experience point, you remove the lowest card to make a space. For another experience point, you can add a card up to a 7 that is 1 higher than the current value. So we had 5s. So for one experience point, you could take away an ace, and for another experience point, you could add a six. For two experience points, so now if we want to, we've done that next week. So we've got one of them up to seven. To get it up past that, again, every time the first thing you have to do is burn one to remove the lowest card. Then if you have two more, you can add a card from an 8 up that is one higher than the current value. So you could get rid of a 2, in that example we used before, get rid of the 2 and take the 8. Or you can add a new skill, or you can upgrade a skill. Upgrading a skill, we're going to leave for character creation. You you basically add an adjective to your skill, and it changes the way that it works, and it increases the way that it works. But depending on which adjective you choose, it changes. There's all kinds of possibilities for every skill. But you can add a skill, upgrade a skill, or add a card of 8 or higher to your deck for 2. For 3 experience points, and again, it really costs 4 because you have to burn your first one to get rid of a card first, and then 3, you can add a jack or a queen. And that is advancement. So you can see it really costs 2, 3, or 4 experience points to do something. So you have to play a well-rounded character that moves forward and develops before you're going to get the experience that you need to move to start using those experience points to move forward. So that's not bad. 1 hour, and everybody's utterly confused. It's going to make more sense in a week when we do the character creation and the actual sample adventure. We kind of did one tonight, but I want to do one with 3 or 4 players here so we can see how that works. But that's enough rules for tonight. Even my head's full. Any questions before we go on to the lore? Change my punch to thunder punch. Basically, yes. So yeah, any skill that you have. Oh, here I can show you. It's right down here. Here are the equipment tags. The writing's quite small, so I'll read them. Just for example, I picked this one. Protective. Reduces the value of each exhaustion consequence by 1. So as if I'd had that 3 cards that were there before and said, there's 3 consequences here, because you have a protective martial arts, you would only have to face 2 of them. Self-replicating. Okay, you broke your gun. If you have a self-replicating gun or a self-replicating skill, the object that you have can create a copy of itself if it comes into contact with the raw materials equal to 3 times the amount necessary to originally create it. So there's some silly things in here, but you can add those to your skill to make it, and you can see there's a whole list of them. So you can, and it's written so that you could take any single one of these and add them to any skill that you've got. Yep, laser sword, absolutely. And then it's a self-replicating laser sword. So if you put it in a pile of spare parts, it will make another laser sword in short order. So you'll always have a backup. Or you take a flashy one. Flashy sword. The object is easier to detect from long distances for you and everybody else. But you can see maybe you can't because the writing is so small, but there are positive and negative equipment tags. I don't know why you'd take a negative one, but things like specialist is a negative tag. Only a character with a qualifying skill, a jack or a queen or a wild card can use the objects. Things like that. So as long as you fill that role, then you're fine. But we're gonna do that during character creation because you get 1 upgrade. So we'll touch on those as you do it. That's enough rules for tonight, but that is the whole character sheet. You see, there's really not that much to it. The gear, we didn't go into jokers. We didn't do that. We should do that. I should very quickly touch on that. The classes, I kind of missed doing the classes. Oops. That's kind of a thing. Page 47. 1 moment, please. Here we go. The archetypes. So these are basically your classes, the archetypes that you get. Um, each one comes with starting equipment, which you can see here. In this case, the architect, we're going to get to the lore in a second, but the architect gets a leather apron, and it tells you when you go and look in the items and gear page, it tells you what that gives you. They also get a scalpel that is a combat knife or a medical bag. They then get, it shows you, you saw gear was empty on the character page. There's blank lines. There's 4 blank lines. These are the 4 skills that you get, but you choose skills. You don't get all of these. We're going to do that in character creation next week because we did enough rules this week. But those get penciled in to that section of the character page, and you choose which ones from those and the other skills that you're going to actually use. But basically, your architect has advanced medicine, so they are a doctor. They also have, they can reprogram constructs. This is the word for the necrobiotic themselves, the dead that have been brought back, turned into mindless automatons and are used essentially as slave labor. So you can fix peoples and you can fix the constructs if you choose these skills. You can also, you have the ability to basically make compounds of almost any kind. And this is where your ability to create would be very, very useful and easy, because if you took that skill, you'd have 2 cards to do it. There's also societal esteem. If you choose to that one, you can use your social position to your advantage. That's the architect. They're this simple. This is all there is to them. Boy meat. There you go. Next one, the engineer. Healing powders. Yes, you can make tinctures and powders and all kinds of stuff. Because the world, which we're going to get into in a minute, is electricity free. That's gone. That tech is gone. But we'll get to that in a minute. The second archetype you can choose is an engineer. Pretty self-explanatory. Your starting equipment is a great big hammer and another one of these leather aprons. They're basically a status symbol that says you are sort of board certified. Your 4 skills are engineering design, so any problem, there's a solution. Mechanical and chemical construction, exactly what it says. You can plan it using your engineering design and then figure out how to make it work using your construction, build it. Makeshift armory, everything is a weapon if you think about it right. And again, societal esteem, because you are a member of the board, so to speak. Not really, but kind of. The next class is the next archetype is militia. This is detective, basically. You can see their starting equipment is a repeating hand crossbow, a sonic truncheon, and suppression grenades. These guys are about stunning people mostly and not killing them. Their gear skills are these are basically like the local police. This is not the army. This is just the police. So Codex Scientificus is there is their law here is a set of equations, and if you run your numbers, the situation through the equations and are found guilty, that's exactly what it is. You're done. So we'll get more of that in the lore, but that's one of your possibilities is the knowledge of how to manipulate and use this to your own advantage. Interrogation, you're extremely good at getting information out of people. Search for traces, you're extremely good at finding stuff. A bureaucratic process, you know how to cut red tape. There's a couple more here. The Technophant, this is your tank. This is a combat knife, a repeating hand crossbow, blacksmith in a box, which is your basic repair kit. Your gear skills are techno-powered combat. You basically wear powered armor and fight in that. You're extremely fast. Again, if you choose these, supercharged movement, you're extremely fast. You know how to repair and fix your own stuff. And you know how to survive in bad situations. Again, those are your choices, not the 4 you get, but the 4 that you put on your list to choose from. There's only 2 left. The Technosopher. They come with the rifle and a drone. They have information technology. These are the people that are trying to put the world back together, mostly the healing or the electronic world. So you can see they're trying to learn computer languages. It allows them to interface with machines. They know how to put electronics together. They know how that works. If they can find an old working vehicle, they can drive it, and they know how to how to survive. Those are all kind of the not in the city, because if you're out of the city, you're dead. But the other people that are here are the children of the river. These are the ones that have said, if this is how the world's going to go, it must be time to go back to nature. So they start with a cascade poncho, which again in their location is a status symbol. Plus, it has some stuff that it does. But their gear skills are different. This is as close to magic as there is in the game. Melodic shift is the ability to listen and alter the song of the sleeping world. Which is their central belief. Um, you can change it, but the more you change it, the more it will rebel. So we'll get into more detail on this if anybody chooses this archetype. Harmonic state. This allows you to perform a ceremony, essentially, and you gain a token that you can use for various things. You can also tune, sort of basically tune into the flow, and you can conduct the chorus. This is basically allows you to spread news. It allows you to gossip at an extremely effective level. So that's it for the classes. We've gone through this. The only thing left that I'm going to do tonight is a little lore dump. This is going to be quick, and it's not going to be with this background because that's kind of busy. Let's go back to the cover. All right. I'm just going to read this. This is the history that comes from the book. I paraphrased slightly, but not very much. So, in less than 30 years, the world ended. No more civilization, no more transportation, no more cell phones, just darkness. The survivors formed communities, barricading themselves behind the walls of makeshift fortresses. The world fell to an apocalypse of harmless and quiet ruin, not with a bang, but with a whimper. In the end, it came back to haunt us. Wait a minute, what is that line? In the end, what came back to haunt us was of our own creation. In 2057, Florence proclaimed the year of La Grande Hecatombe. Inside the walls, all is death. Outside the walls, it's worse. Starvation reigned. There was no one to raise the livestock, no one to cultivate the fields, no one to do anything other than survive. The builders, led by Elizabeth Agori, ended the crisis by combining biology, precision mechanics, and thermohydraulics. They reanimated the dead and made them into autonomous working machines. The Florentine scientific empire was born. Over time, the constructs came to look less human and more like leather mannequins. Now, all new corpses go straight to the citadel for conversion. The dead are the basis for the entire economy and society of Florence. They're everywhere. Everywhere. Electronics and all that goes with it is long gone. With only 1 out of every 20 people left, there's not enough knowledgeable people left to repair the disused and broken systems. Paradoxically, the medical advances that allowed for reanimation also made it possible to treat virtually all illnesses, conditions, and injuries if medical attention is sought in a timely manner. Organs can be regrown, limbs transplanted. An 80-year-old Florentine looks like a 50-year-old in our times, circa 19 or circa 2000. Human life is all but sacrosanct in Florence. Even the most hardened criminals would find murder inconceivable. Only the maddest of the mad kill. If you were to walk into Florence in this time, you'd see gas lamps sputtering and hissing as they cast a welcoming soft yellow light. It's misty, wet, and cold. It's late afternoon, early winter. It's loud. There's a cacophony of mechanical motion, a concert of steam, brass, and steel, because that's what the constructs sound like. A whir, a whine, a puff of steam, and the faint hint of preserved flesh as the construct walks by. A mechanical vessel executing an algorithm, nothing more. The camera follows them through the all but deserted streets. Nobody's hiding. There's just almost nobody left. The noise ahead grows into a throbbing, clanging, echoing mass of noise and noises. Seemingly completely out of place, a busy marketplace in the process of closing for the night. Cargo constructs pack up and haul away the vendors' wares. Others start sweeping the streets. Still others maintain the lamps and the braziers, all infinitely patient, steaming, banging, and hissing in that comforting yellow light. What passes for fashion here prizes functionality and toughness. Flair and style are rare indeed. A tavern door opens and the smell of beer and food wafts out. The light from the door highlights a row of people outside waiting quietly to be fed. On the street, a team of 6 dead oxen, powered by boilers, pulls a cart with barrels and boxes. 3 constructs disembark and carry the goods into the tavern. A wooden sign over the door reads, "The Don't Fall Tavern and Feedery. We have gumbo and pale ale if you can't pay." That's as much as I'm going to read for now, because the rest of it is the description for the players when they start. Except that I am going to read this bit. The normative equations I talked about earlier, this is how the law is applied here. The normative equations are a spectacularly complex set of formulae used to determine culpability. It is said they are so complex that only certain builders understand them. The cynics wonder if even they do, and the damned cynics are certain that they are a ruse designed to cover up the politically motivated punishment of those that won't toe the council's line. So with that, I think go. So that's the kind of world it's a post-apocalyptic steampunk where the problem of slavery has been solved. Um, I can see some people would want to put this world and start playing with the rights of the dead and that sort of thing. I'm not gonna go there because I think that breaks the world. Um, they are automatons. There's nothing there. That's true. They are machines made from the dead and nothing more. I'm sure there will be ethical questions asked in this campaign, but that's the world that it's going to be set in. So it's dark, but it's dark with an element of hope. That's what I got out of this when I read this rule set. The rules are going to make way more sense in 1 week when we actually create characters, and you'll be able to see what a hand of cards really looks like and what an encounter or 2 or 3 really looks like. And then we'll be able to take it from there. But the plan is to do that in 1 week. That'll be the 17th of November for those folks that are watching live, December for those folks that are watching live. And then the game itself will be starting in the first week in January. We've got 4 confirmed and 1 more waiting to see. So we will have either 4 or 5 players in that. It's going to be a campaign probably 6 months to a year long. We'll see where it goes. Now, please release the bazillion questions you have, I'm sure. Or it's so confusing you don't have any questions, and that worries me. Or comments. What do you think? What do you think of the world? What do you think of the game system? What do you think of the mechanic? That's my big thing, because that's what really drew me to this. The idea of knowing how many successes there are you have in your hand, and how many successes you need to succeed, and by how much. What do you think of the idea of zero randomness to the decision making process? One challenge I can see is people going no, 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 no when they start saying I want to do this, and I say that's three face up and four face down. They go no. Okay, I want to do this instead. Okay, well that's two face up and three feet down. No, well I want to do this. Okay, well that's two and three. It's two and one. It's two and one. And they just go no, 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 no. I can see that being a possibility. I don't think it's going to happen with anybody in our community, but I can see that as just as somebody a cynic looking for things that could go wrong. I saw that when I read that bit because you have the right to say no once you've been told what the odds are. Yeah. As far as initiative, I know what you mean because and it confused me too. The short answer is every single person's encounter is different. You can both target uh, the same encounter or the same problem, but everybody does it one at a time. There is an optional rule for helping other people, but I think we're going to leave that at least for the beginning because, well, maybe not. It allows you to play a card for somebody else and give them your success essentially. So we might do that too. I have to make sure. But yes, other than that, initiative is if you start the encounter, you go first in any order you guys choose to go in. If they start the encounter, you react because that's all that happens in this game, but you react in any order. So it's always up to you who goes in what order, and it doesn't have to stay the same from turn to turn. So that does bring up another potential hang point where people go, no, if I do this and then you do this, no, if I do this and then you do this, looking for synergies. Again, I don't expect it. Plus, the synergies in this thing I think are going to be pretty obvious. So we're gonna know who wants to go first. And it means that the cleric never rolls a 21 initiative and has to go first and hold a heal action until somebody gets hurt. So I think it's going to be very easy to get fatigued in this game, and that's going to cause most of the trauma is running out of cards. This, at its heart, to make up for that lack of randomness, the challenge then becomes resource management because there's only either 22 or 24 cards in your deck. You've got a maximum of six of them in your hand, and it costs to take one back. You have mistaken cleric and paladin, my good friend. Throwing your smites out there. They're not spell slots; they're smite slots. But you're a pally. So yeah, in this one, there is only the one class that can heal, and if you don't have that class, you can't take that skill. And not even all of them can heal; they have to choose it. What I will give away about character creation is you saw there's four of these sub skills in each one. So when you fill in the four from your Joker, there's 16. You get to pick six at the start. Yeah, if you believe in yourself. I would like to smite. Yes. How do we level up and get more skills? Yeah. You have to survive, but the leveling up is the that character thing where you have to do the four things to get one experience point. So you have to do each of them twice actually before you can really do anything because it costs you one experience point to remove a card and one experience point to add one. At the minimum, it costs two experience points to add them if they're above an eight. Why am I the target? Because I could see you when I had the thought. Yes, okay. So yes, inventory is explained. So now that we're back here, those four skills that each of them have go in there. And you at the start of the game, you've got 16 skills to choose from, and you can have either six or you can have five and upgrade one of them using that list of words that we saw at the end. And then your inventory also comes from where you start. An inventory has got six slots for a reason. No matter how much stuff you find, you can never carry more than 6 things. So that's how they solve encumbrance. But yeah, nice simple character sheet. I think it took me a while to get my head around this bit and the playing of the cards. I did exactly what you tried to do tonight, which is I played a couple sample hands. So I think next week when we get some of the players in here and build these characters, building the character itself is going to help explain a lot about the rules of the game, and then playing the sample encounters will teach us the rest of what we need to know, and then we can sort of process that for the couple of weeks before the new year. Yes, exactly, and that's the nice thing is in this game. It's well, like any game that I like. You don't need to know the rules. Just tell me what you want to do. That is literally where every action in this game starts. It's right there in the rules. First thing, tell me what you want to do, and I'll tell you what you how. And in this case, I'll tell you how you're gonna kind of. We'll figure out how you're gonna do it together, and then I'm gonna tell you exactly what your chances are of being able to succeed. So I I'm really looking forward to this. Yeah. And yeah, it's the vast majority of people learn better watching. But I did this because some of us learn by going through the rule book. So it is a 224-page rule book, and yeah, I crammed that down to less than 4 pages. And oh, there are skills, but most issues I gave you. Yeah. Well, that's everybody. That's every GM ever, right? That sounds like a this rule. And we'll have discussions about it. Somebody will tell me the difference between this and this, or why would you be able to use that. But as many of you know, I always have a challenge I set for myself in these games, and this one is a weird one for me. I want to stay as close to rules as written as possible in this one. I never do that. I said over and over how much I like this system, so I'm going to give it an actual, honest, real play the way that they wrote it. And I'm going to do everything I can to stay rules as written on this one. Make your case precisely. Yeah. I'm going to pretend I'm a stripper, but I'd like to use dexterity. I beg your pardon. Well, it's not about how I look, it's about how I move. Okay, sure. Yeah. Yep. Well, I wouldn't, yeah. And then exactly, yeah. I said, that's what I would think. And they go, no, no, I'm going to use this instead because this. And the other thing, the nice thing with these is they're nice and open ended, right? Charisma, that's a really open ended skill. Firmness, right? Being difficult to talk out of things or difficult to argue with. That's a really open ended thing. Yeah, readiness. You're always prepped. I think you can. Yeah, I forget exactly what readiness does, but yeah, they're all in there. It's nice and basic. It's more. It sounds more complicated than it is, and that was part of tonight too. Is if I can't explain it, I can't. I don't understand the rules, and I feel like I explained it fairly well, given we didn't do character creation and we only did kind of a semi encounter. A Twitch play was probably not the best way to run a sample encounter. Yeah, yeah, good. That's all that mattered. That's all that this was for, is to give people an idea that they feel like once you fill out this character sheet, you're going to know what it means. The trick is the cards and the character sheet. Once you build a deck and look through your deck and go, okay, I'm starting to get this now. Like I didn't do it tonight, but say you've got say you were making a play in flesh. So you're trying to you're trying to charm somebody into letting you into a place you shouldn't go. So you're making a charisma check, and you have um, what was I going to go with this? I don't remember. Anyway, you can ambush people. Yes, as long as that's the trick with this game. As far as initiative and actions versus versus reactions go, It definitely benefits the party to start the shit. Pardon the language, but yeah, start the fight. Because if you start it, you get to choose which consequences get annulled, and you get to choose. You get to go in what order you want to go in, and yeah, it gives you a huge advantage because you can reduce your enemy's ability to do trauma to you to impose consequences on you just by going first. Yes, exactly right. The only downside with possible downside with that is you will develop a reputation. So yeah, but and depending on where you are too, like when you're in the city, then you might want to be nice. But you get outside the walls, this place gets deadly outside the walls. There's no sort of hopping in a wagon and buggering off to Venice. It is a military mission to get anywhere. But it is set in Florence. The actual ruins. As soon as I found that out, I went and found a map of Florence and drew my version of the world, and only then realized that the inside cover of the book. Where is it? Somewhere in here. Let me go find it. Is where is it? There's a lot of art in this book. A tremendous amount of art. But somewhere in here, one of the pieces is an actual sort of fractional map of Florence, which I didn't realize until after I made mine. But we're going to see that in roll 20 as well. Anyway, that's enough for tonight. My brain is full, and I supposedly knew this before we started. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for everybody watching the VOD. Um, Hopefully, if you have any questions, PM me. Put it in Let's Talk Gaming. I've been watching there all night, and we'll do so in the future. And 1 week from tonight, we will create characters and do a couple sample encounters, and it will make much, much, much more sense when we do so. So until then, as always, be nice to each other. Good night. Oh, hi, Thunderscape. Just in time for us to be done. Good night.